This is a true story of a dangerous prison from which no inmate has escaped to this day. However, 3 inmates did the impossible, what no prisoner of that prison has been able to do until today, and the entire South African police kept watching them. The time was 1978, South Africa. That was a time when there was racial discrimination between blacks and whites, and the National Party was the ruling party here. There were many such organizations that are against the National Party, and they conducted movements against them, which are considered illegal. Among the activists are Tim and Stephen. They are white South Africans. They are against the government and use pamphlets to reach out to people and raise awareness. Distributing these pamphlets is very risky because if anyone sees them, they could be arrested. Moreover, not everyone readily accepts their message. However, since not everyone readily accepts their message, both of them come up with a tactic. In crowded places, they place the pamphlets and then blast them, causing the pamphlets to scatter in all directions. This prompts people to start reading them. And when they attempt this, the police arrested them. Later on, Tim's girlfriend, who is a black lady, she comes to meet him in the police station and gives him some money, which Tim discreetly conceals. And now, both of them are brought to court where their crime is proven. Tim had made more than 200 bombs to blast the pamphlets, so Tim is sentenced to 12 years. Stephen, who was involved with this, receives an 8-year sentence. After hearing the sentence, Stephen completely breaks down. As the police preparing to transfer them to Pretoria jail, Stephen tries to escape, but he gets caught and he is severely beaten as a consequence. After this, they are taken to Pretoria jail, where the warden, whom everyone calls the captain, he informs them about the jail rules. He accuses them of treason, stating that they are traitors because despite being white, they are against white people and support black people. Now they are brought inside the jail. Tim thoroughly inspects every corner of the jail, and then Tim and Stephen are placed in adjacent cells. The guard warns them that if they make their cells dirty, they will be punished, and then the guard leaves. And now they talk to each other by knocking on the wall. The next morning, when they go for breakfast, they notice that some prisoners here are wearing blue uniforms, while theirs are gray. Tim takes his food and goes to the blue-clad prisoners, those who stare at him intently. Just then, an old man comes up to him and asks him to join him, leading him to a separate table. This old man's name is Dennis Goldberg. He is a political prisoner serving a life sentence. Here, Stephen is shown. He is about to sit with the blue-dressed prisoners with his food, but all the gray-dressed prisoners signal him and tap to make him understand that sitting there is dangerous. And now, he also comes to Tim and Dennis. Dennis explains that all the blue-dressed prisoners here are ruthless criminals. They are serving sentences for murder and serious crimes. Just then, a black prisoner raises his voice, so the guard comes and severely beats him. The blue-dressed prisoners enjoy this, while the gray ones don't find it pleasing. The next morning, when Tim and Stephen are outside, Dennis is also with them. Dennis tells them that the walls here are 20 feet high with searchlights that stay on throughout the night. Additionally, there are guards on top who don't hesitate to shoot any prisoner without a second thought. Dennis informs them that escaping from this jail is virtually impossible. Dennis tells them that even digging tunnels wouldn't be easy here because the jail is so massive. It would take many years to dig a tunnel all the way out. As they discuss these matters, a prisoner named Leonard overhears them. He approaches them and says that Dennis always scares other prisoners, but it's true that no one has ever escaped from this jail. Escaping from here is very difficult, but sometimes things happen for the first time in life, and I also want to escape from here. If you plan to escape, so I am also with you. And as they discussing all this, Captain notices them from above. He becomes suspicious that something fishy is going on. At night, when Tim is in his cell, he keeps looking at his cell's lock and wonders how it could be opened. For 23 days, he keeps thinking about it, and after 23 days, he gets an idea, if he can make a duplicate key for the doors, so he can escape from there. The next day, he tells his companions that if they all work together to make a wooden key, they can unlock the locks and escape from there. However, Leonard doesn't have much faith in his idea. He says that there are many doors here with lots of locks, and it's impossible to find enough wood to make keys for all those locks. Stephen suggests that if we go to the workshop, so we could find enough wood there for our plan. However, the first step would be to craft the keys. Starting the next day, Tim meticulously studies the cluster of keys hanging from the guard's belt, and after returning to his cell, he designs one key at a time. This way, 74 days pass by. Now, Tim has designed almost all the keys. The following day, when they go to the workshop, Tim collects small pieces of wood from there and hides them to his bottle, which every prisoner has to store their tea, coffee, or water. Tim gathers various items from the workshop, such as tools and other things, and placed into his bottle, which he can use to shape the wood and make keys. He also placed cloth into the top of the bottle so that the wood doesn't make noise when the bottle moves. Just then, a guard arrives there, and he becomes suspicious of Tim. So, when it's time for them to return to their cells, the guard checks his bottles. He empties all the liquid from Tim's bottle and shakes it, but because the cloth is inside, there is no sound coming from his bottle, and Tim manages to escape suspicion. After returning to his cell, Tim takes out all the items from his bottle and shapes a key from the wooden pieces. He glues it together and uses a file to create the teeth of the key. Once the key is ready, he inserts it into the lock of his cell's door. Initially, the key doesn't turn smoothly, but with a little force, it finally turns, and the door opens. And still, there is another door in front of him, which is a steel door, and its lock can only be opened from the outside, and he hasn't made the key for it yet. The next day, Tim observes the guard very closely, who has the key, and he quickly makes that key as well. Today marks his complete 100 days here, and now he doesn't want to stay here any longer. The next day, they test the key for the steel door. Leonard keeps an eye on the guard, and Tim inserts the key into the lock of the steel door. He tries to turn it, but the shape of the key isn't perfect, so they take it out and shape it better with the file. After reshaping it, he tries again, and this time it fits into the door lock. He turns the key, and the key works, but when he tries to turn it back, the key breaks. Everyone panics, and Dennis throws a knife towards him to try to retrieve the wooden piece, but just then, a guard approaches there, so everyone flee from there. And now, due to turning the key, the lock of the steel door has come out, and now it's open. After the guard leaves, Tim tries to put it inside, but it doesn't go inside the lock. In the evening, when all the inmates retreat to their cells, a guard comes and notices that the lock on Tim's outer door is open. Inside the cell, Tim becomes extremely anxious because if Captain comes to know about this, he will face severe punishment. However, despite seeing it, the guard chooses to ignore him and walks away. The day arrives when inmates can meet their relatives, but no one comes to see Tim. Leonard's son comes to see him, and they converse in French, which goes against the jail's rules. Consequently, the guard escorts him away. Although each inmate has half an hour to meet their relatives, but Leonard's son is taken away early because of speaking in French. Today, they've been in jail for a total of 142 days. They can't figure out how to open the steel door outside. Leonard comes up with an idea, saying we can use a rope to reach the lock. Tim says we can reach the lock, but we can't turn it using the rope. Just then, Captain comes there. As he observes their conversation, doubt creeps back into his mind. But, they quickly cover up, explaining that they're discussing work matters. After the captain leaves, Stephen notices the sticks behind the broom and suggests that if they stick the key into the stick, they can reach the lock through the window using the stick. However, the stick they have is too short, and they would need to apply a mechanism to it to turn the key. The next day, they all go to the workshop where Tim sees a machine spinning, which inspiring him to create a similar mechanism. At night, upon returning to his cell, he uses the machine to embed the key into the stick, and uses it to take the key to the hole in the steel gate. After inserting the key, he turns it, and unlocking the gate. Tim is thrilled that he has finally succeeded in opening the lock. The next morning, during the breakfast, Tim tells Stephen and Leonard about all this. He says, "I succeeded in opening the door, but now we shouldn't keep the keys with us. If Captain finds out about the keys, our punishment will be even worse." So, they bury the keys in the ground inside a box. As they were talking, the captain notices them and approaches. He asks them several questions, but they respond in a way that confuses him, leaving him with no answers. Eventually, the captain walks away from there. Dennis, who was working nearby, he tells them, "I warned you not to try to escape from the jail, but if you still want to escape and find yourselves in need of my help somewhere, will let me know." And now, every night, Tim unlocks the door of his cell and goes near the next door, and attempting to make keys. Today marks 206 days in jail for them. Tim has crafted numerous keys by now. One day, he sees a black man outside carrying garbage. Tim gestures to him and says he needs a newspaper. The man says he'll take cigarettes in exchange. Tim agrees to his terms, and now he gets the newspaper. Every night, he goes out of his cell with Leonard and crafted keys for the next doors. He has all the keys from the upper floor, and tonight, they are going downstairs. As they are looking at the key for the downstairs door, a security guard is about to come there. To hide from him, they both hide in a storeroom. It's fortunate that the security guard doesn't notice anything, and both of them return to their cells. Now, as they stayed awake throughout the night, both of them are now waking up much later than usual. This change in routine arouses suspicion in the guard who previously searched Tim's bottle in the workshop. Consequently, he becomes suspicious of them and orders all the prisoners to come out of their cells for thorough searches. As the guard enters Tim's cell and notices the wooden pieces of the key, he picks them up and inquires about their purpose. Tim swiftly responds, "I'm trying to make a photo stand." The guard accepts his explanation without suspicion. Upon further inspection, the guard finds the stick with rope bands but doesn't detect anything amiss. He issues a stern warning, cautioning him against any dubious activities and emphasizing the severe consequences they would face. Saying this, the guard departs from the cell. Tim realizes that keeping any piece of the key with him wouldn't be wise. Therefore, he hides all the key's fragments in different places of the jail. Over time, more than 400 days pass, and by now, he has fashioned almost all the keys needed. In total, he has crafted 39 keys thus far. Tim decides that they should escape as soon as possible. He goes to Dennis and says that he and his companions should escape with them. But, Dennis and his companions refuse to escape from the jail. Therefore, they decide that the next night, all three of them will escape from there. The following night, all three of them step out of their cells. Tim once again goes to Dennis and says, "Come with us." But Dennis refuses to escape. So, one by one, they start opening the doors and moving forward. Before leaving the jail, they also change their clothes. After that, all three of them reach the lower floor, and just as they are about to open the lower gate, a guard arrives there. All three of them hide in the same storeroom. The guard is now about to open the storeroom door because he suspects that something is going there. That's when we are shown Dennis, who has broken his cell's bulb to short-circuit it and starts shouting loudly. That's why the guard has to go upstairs. Actually, this was part of their plan. Whenever they enter the storeroom, Dennis will somehow lure the guard upstairs, allowing all three of them to proceed further. When the guard goes upstairs, all three of them exit from there and reach the door, which is an electric door that can only be opened with a button. If they try to open this door with a key, the security alarm will sound. There's a button in the guard's room to open the door. Leonard says, "I'll go to the guard's room and turn on the button. After that, the door will open, and we can leave from here." Leonard does just that, and the electric door opens. Now, in front of them is the final door, which they observe through the peephole. This is where the main gate is, which is still open, and outside the gate is the road, meaning their freedom. They hug each other, and now, one by one Tim tries to apply all the keys, but the gate doesn't open with any of the keys, because they didn't make its key. For the first time, all three of them have reached this point. Tim says, "We have to go back and make the key." Leonard says, "We can't do that, even if it costs me my life, I won't go back from here." Leonard carefully examines the lock and discovers a hollow piece of wood inside, suggesting it could be broken. He tries to break it, it makes loud noise. Tim gets scared and checks inside, but until now, the guards hadn't heard this sound. He returns to Leonard and by now, Leonard had broken the wood considerably. Tim says we should break it completely. After that, he strikes it a few more times, causing the gate to open. And now, freedom awaits them. Afterwards, they start to move forward slowly. On top of the wall where the guard is stationed, is about to watch them. Before he spots them, Tim sees him, and all three hide behind the wall, and they keep an eye on him through the mirror. As soon as the guard leaves the spot, all three make their way out of the jail. On their way, they encounter some guards who don't recognize them, and now all three head to the taxi stand. There, they hire a taxi to leave the area. The next morning, the guards in the jail find out that these three have escaped, which makes them scared because now their jobs are at risk. The other inmates are laughing at them because these three have done what no one else has been able to do in this jail before. Now, all three of them escape from their confinement, traversing numerous borders one after another until they finally reach London. Once again, they embark on their mission to eradicate the discrimination between blacks and whites. Few years later, Dennis is shown. He was released after 22 years, which means, in 1992, because that was the year when racial discrimination between blacks and whites was permanently ended worldwide, because, in the year of 1994, Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. So friends, this was the complete story of the film Escape from Pretoria, which is based on true events. We hope you enjoyed this story.